And actually, I kind of wanted to talk to you about what you think the benefits and the things that small businesses can do that large businesses can't.
Big businesses, because they are, by the nature of being big, they can afford to be more wasteful, which is actually a benefit in a roundabout way, because they can try out lots of stuff, not really realizing they're trying it out, but they'll spin up a team and there'll be an initiative to do this thing. And then a year of someone's career could be on something that some exec later decides, no, stop doing that now. And they can place bets with teams of people doing stuff.
But also there's they have a lower risk tolerance because the people who are working in the organization, the risk is often, if it goes really wrong, you've lost a job. And so their choice, is what Rory Southern talks about, their choice doesn't come from, is this the most innovative thing I could possibly do? It's, is this choice so risky that I might get fired? If yes, I'm not going to do it. If no, I will do it. And so you kind of that's where the sort of beginnings of stifling innovation comes from. So you're right, they have more options, but do they actually use it? Probably not.
So I think it's the opposite. I think if you're employed in a large organization and you're put on a project that no one single person has 100% skin in the game in, everyone's skin in the game in that project or initiative is on doing a good job and getting a promotion. And that probably cascades up to the person whose initiative it was, because they're doing this initiative to try and hit one of their KPIs so they get a promotion or what have you.
But there's so much in that. Like, you're acting like there is this sort of meritocracy, and people still believe in promotions and people still believe in climbing a ladder in a corporation versus, probably working on a project and then jumping off somewhere else, or your boss taking credit for you, or you, not having skin in the game, so not particularly caring all that much on the outcome, therefore your efforts towards it.
I mean, in big businesses, that is the main motivation. I'm talking the best, most visible example of that is that in big tech like Meta and Amazon and whatnot, the entire culture there is getting a story together that your manager can present as evidence for you going up a level and pay band. That is the game. I'm talking that's large businesses, not small to medium enterprises, but publicly traded companies. Obviously, there's people who are just happy where they are and doing and whatnot. But for what I guess I'm looking at a large business as an organism that isn't inherently aware of itself, and there are small parts of it that are popping up and dying, cells mutating and whatnot, and that has a different type of risk. It doesn't know that it's risky. It's just trying stuff out, and it doesn't know why it's trying it out. 99% of it is just noise and doesn't do anything. And so I think that when you shrink down to a 2-person or solo operated company, they are inherently conscious of the risky thing they're trying. And if they're doing that, they're not doing anything else, which is the stable thing that is already reliable. So it is inherently way more risky to try new stuff. It's easier, I think, you can just start something without the bureaucracy of trying to do something. But and then that's maybe the paradoxical thing is it's easier to do it in a small company, but it is higher risk, because if you put all your eggs in a basket and then you change your business model and your old business model is going away, a large company probably won't ever do that because they're so established that it's not that conceivable for their existing business model to just shut off. Does that track in terms of, that's how I look at it, just in terms of the
Yeah.
the size of things. Like with what
Yeah.
we're doing at Pip Decks, it is, it is risky and scary, and there isn't like necessarily a backup plan. But also because if the business does die, that isn't also as like a big of a shockwave as if like a big business would die. And that's just, I think there's like a law of physics that like the bigger a thing is, the more energy it consumes, but the harder it is to kill. That's why things want to get big. Businesses want to get big. They want loads of cash in the bank. They want lots of risk mitigation, because that's what living things do to survive.
Mm-hmm. I
Right?
guess you probably have just a more optimistic view on larger organizations than I do. I think I just go straight into there is a certain size, I don't know what size it is, or a certain management structure or something like that, where the innovation in that company starts to dwindle and it starts to become more of a cost saving exercise, and it starts to become an extraction exercise rather than an innovation exercise, that everyone's kind of holding on for dear life and being like, right, don't rock the boat. This is kind of doing okay. Let's just kind of keep things the same and introduce things that aren't necessarily going to be useful or that good, but they're safe and we can probably make more money off of it. Which is where, like, I think sometimes some companies just like insert AI because it's like can seen as like a safe option in some ways. And it's also quite easy and doesn't really, someone's innovated for you. They've made the AI for you and you just put like Canva and slap it on top and then whack it into Canva and there you go. Yeah. And I suppose.
So you're talking about like the innovation of the the offering that the company is
creating,
and because
the output of a business.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you could interpret innovation in loads of different ways. Like from the time I spent in big business, a lot of the innovation work that I was involved with, customers don't see. Like it is, turning paper processes into digital ones that saves the employee's time, gives them more headspace to do more important stuff, saves fucking loads of trees. Well, that's like an innovative thing. Is like looking at the business and be like, how can we improve this internally? But from time at another organization, anything that ever innovative that came out, it usually came from someone new to the business who was hired because of. It's almost like if you've been there too long, you lose the social. I don't know, not power, but like the social naivety and maneuverability of being new to come in and like shake stuff up. You don't have that if you've been there for like 5+ years, and it becomes risky on you and your career and your standing socially to just suddenly come out and say, hey, right, I think we should do this radical new different thing. And if that's not part of your character, it's a scary thing to personally do, to present like a crazy new idea. And so I think that's why it tends to come from like, oh, we've hired the head of Deliveroo to come and like, they've got such a great perspective on this. So that, we're expecting them to come and like disrupt the status quo. And then they come around, they fire people, they change processes. They have that naive superpower of not being encumbered by how things were done before, which also can work against them. And then the new thing will launch. It'll kind of be hyped up for a bit, and then everything will return to the mean average of like, oh, people aren't adopting it that much. It loses steam, and then it goes away, and then you're back to normal again. But like maybe something changed because of that at a large organization. Maybe something that triggered something else to change a little bit. So I think it really is like trench warfare at that size of a company where you're just like inching stuff forward. And it is just like, I don't know, maybe like the surface of the moon. It's just slow over time. It changes because it's been pelted by people coming and going and like changing stuff. I don't know where I was going with that, but it's
so you're sort of saying, yeah, with small businesses, you're sort of like a scrappy thing with a sword swinging around, just going crazy. With a business, it's more of like a giant taking tiny little inches forward, like shuffling to make these sort of changes.
And it doesn't even realize it's doing it necessarily.
What do
I
you
think
mean by it doesn't realize it's doing it?
because it's I think because like a small business, less than 10 people type business, maybe even less than 50 people, there is one person at least who knows everyone's name and who knows the ins and outs of the business and could write it all down in some sort of continuity plan that has a grapple on the entire organism. Like they can see all the sides of it. But like a business that I think over 140 or so, that sort of starts to not be true. And then it gets worse as it, you get to 1,000 employees. Then you've got directors and you've got different regions. So for one CEO to be completely on top of an entire organization is not possible. That's why they become so abstracted from reality, because they're not even looking at a chessboard. They're looking at a chessboard of executives, and those executives control 5,000, employees or a management.
It's not even a chessboard. It's like a report of a chessboard.
Yeah.
Like you can't even see it. You see it yourself. You're just getting various reports of like, oh, by the way, Rook moved to D9. You're like, okay, here's why.
Like, and that other company moved to D9, so we should probably, and that's what Simon Wardley talks about a lot. That is modern business strategy, is just copying other people's chess moves and not knowing positionally why they were made. But it seems
that's
to
interesting. Because that's how I see like most marketing, and it'd be interesting to talk about it outside. Because like marketing is, you see a trend, you copy said trend in the hopes that, and again, it's that kind of like safety that you see someone else doing something, that's a safe thing to do, I'll do it as well and somehow label it innovative because I've just copied someone else. So what you're saying, that you can do that in other areas of the business as well?
I think it is innovative. I think copying and stealing and reappropriating that is inherently what innovation is. It is combining two things together that have not been combined before.
But that's a bit different. That's a bit different from, oh, they've done a dance routine on TikTok, I'll do a dance routine on TikTok, Well,
I don't know. I think it's important to define innovation, because I think some conception is that innovation is inventing something that has not been thought of or seen before and is entirely novel, right? But, if like that TikTok I sent you of that painter who did a sketch that I can't even remember what the hell he did in the video now. He reappropriated some trend, and he was like the last person you would expect to be doing that TikTok trend. And because he did it in a new context, it felt new. Right. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I think copying stuff, I get it though. Like there is safety in copying what works, and there's a reason people copy, because it does work. But I think the trap is you don't actually know if it works. It might not work for you, but when we started running Facebook ads for workshop tactics, back in the day, I didn't start doing that because I had heard other people were doing that, and it felt new to us. But then you soon you get into the Facebook advertising world, and then before you know it, you're out of just sheer paranoia and again safety. You are like tapping into all of the experts on, in the social networks of like, oh, this new technique is in, that technique is out. It's all about 7-day click now, not 1-day click. And you're like, oh my God, I need to make sure that I'm copying their tea leaves and not this, and, not just trying to figure out myself. So there's just, I think, a ton of that always in business, and like mimetic type behavior.
Because I think it's also risky. I think, did we touch upon it last week, that it's risky to try to be just wholly original? That like, and obviously there's this argument that you're not, but like to see if anyone in your space is doing something remotely similar, you have an idea and someone's done something a little bit similar to you, you're like, well, I couldn't possibly do it. That's I need to be so original, and it ends up becoming this a trap that stops you from even starting, or it becomes a cage which stops you from making decisions because you're trying to find the most original, special decision that you can make rather than sort of seeing what works and doing your own version of it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like uh, like an like an over intellectualized problem, because there are some people who just don't have that problem. They'll start a car rental business or a window washing business or whatever, and not stress that they don't seem any different to any other firm out there.
I experienced that loads when I used to work and used to do local radio ads. Like, it's so funny because it was like it was my first marketing job. So I didn't know anything anyway. But the business owners, you'd have like a garage. There's like 5 garages on the same street, and you'd be like knocking on each one, being like, "Do you want to buy some radio ads?" And they would literally say, "Oh, I like what Pete's doing 2 garages down. Can we have something that's like that?"
Mm-hmm.
Or they'll say things like, they'll want taglines, which as a marketer, you want to come up with the most original, fresh taglines, and the best ones don't sound like ads and stuff like that. They like the ones that sounded like ads. Like, they like the ones where it's like, their tagline is, we'll beat any price.
Yeah.
And that's,
yeah.
they liked it. And it's, I guess, it doesn't have to be the most amazing thing ever, because they were probably always going to get customers anyway because of where they're serving and the local area and stuff like that. In terms of radio adverts, it actually didn't need to be the best ever.
Well, I think one of the, like, I don't know if it's, I don't really, I love absolutist advice. I love trying to find like the truth in something. Like, everything needs to be done this way, otherwise it's wrong. Like, there's a comfort in trying to find those truths, but I wrestle with the fact that they don't really exist. And one of the truths that I reject quite often is the advice that, oh, to start a business, you just need to copy what someone else is doing and just do it better. And I think that's true to a certain extent, but like, I think the problem with that is better is so undefined. And what you ought to try and do is think about how you can do it differently. And it might sound quite benign, like the difference between better and differently, but at least asking what would you do differently has a more concrete brief to it. And then you're in the world of like blue ocean strategy stuff, which I found really helpful setting up the Pip Decks brand, because I had that, like, I did have that real problem of, I don't want to be like everyone else. I want to be special. I want this to be a unique idea. I feel uncomfortable with it because lots of card decks already exist. And the paranoia that I'm just another schmuck starting another card deck company or what have you was too much of a challenge on my ego. So the blue ocean strategy exercise is really handy for that, because it basically gets you to list out the whole concept of blue ocean strategy is that you don't want to fight in the red ocean because that's where all the blood is. Everyone's like taking chunks out of each other. You want to go in the blue ocean where there's.
So what's the red ocean in, outside of the analogy? What is the red ocean?
I don't know. All car companies are in the red ocean. They're all making the next model because everyone's wanting an SUV, so they're also making an SUV. Everyone, one car company started doing a rear view parking camera or whatever. Now everyone's like, shit, we need to have that in our cars. Like, it's just like, that's probably a really good industry to look at in terms of not necessarily copycatting, but just customer expectation of features and demand and safety and all that sort of thing.
Because they all have the same shape now. Every car is the same shape. I swear.
Yeah.
There's no freshness in the shapes. We've spoken about this before.
Well, that's just that's if we don't want to like diverge into why cars are shaped like that. That's the batteries and aerodynamic optimization. Like, it's reached peak aero now. But Red Ocean is like all car companies, and so you could then list out all of the I guess the capabilities or features of these car companies. And you can score them like from 0 to 10. So all these car companies have a broad range of vehicles on offer, from coupes to SUVs to vans to just 12 different models. And each model each car company also has like 3 or 4 different trim levels that you can pick per car. And they're all petrol, and they're all, have dealers in every location across the world. And you can literally make a curve based on that score. So like car dealers could be 10 because they're just everywhere for, Toyota and Renault or whatever. Broadness of model range, 8 or 9. It could be like for Subaru, you might say, oh, it's only 7 or 8, but you just list out like your top 4 or 5 who you think you would be competing against if you were starting a car company. And you go through all of the capabilities you can possibly think of that's reasonable, even price. If you're competing against Ferrari, then they all have a price that is high, or like Toyota maybe more affordable, a VW slightly more expensive. So you start to see where there's like a divergence in the brands. But I think it's called a value curve, where you can start to see like visually what is different about each brand, just as like a visual representation, as like a wiggly line. And then you bring your car company idea, and the process is quite fun. Like it's almost like innovation on wheels, no pun intended, where you just ask, I think, like 4 separate types of questions for each capability. And it helps you literally design a business that like doesn't compete with them. So take Tesla, for example. Just pretend you're like early days Tesla, like pre Elon Musk. It's like, right, we're going to start a new car company. Everyone's doing petrol. We're going to do only electric. Okay, like that's the most obvious like point of difference. But then they're like, we're going to have no dealerships. You just order online. So you either eliminate a feature, so like just no car dealerships, like Monzo did that, like no high street banks locations, it's all going to be online. Reducing something, so like reducing the model range, so they were like, we're going to have basically 2 models, and it went up to 3 or 4, versus everyone else's 12. And then the next one is raise, so like what capability are you going to increase? I guess you could argue with Tesla, they increased the technical capability with all like the features that was afforded by being an electric car, like the self-driving stuff and whatnot. And then what are you going to create? Like what is the genuinely new thing that you're going to create that doesn't actually exist yet, which is like just one of 4 parts of the whole equation. And I think one of the things they did create with building Tesla was the charging infrastructure that was almost required for adoption of EVs, way back in the day. And then if you draw that graph, it literally looks like the opposite to all the other graphs. So you literally make that is zigging when everyone else is zagging, but as like a actual exercise you can do. And I did that for Pip Decks really early on. I was like, right, all these like workshop facilitation books and guides and things, all the instructions are really long, really wordy, really hard to follow. Mine are going to be really short, concise, and like well tested. Everything's either a book or a website. I'm going to do a card deck. You just literally follow that process. Everything looks really stuffy and corporate. Fucking cartoons. Like, come on. It's just, it literally designs itself, and it feels a bit like cheating when you follow that process. But that's what I mean. It's by almost saying different.
Yeah. It's almost like, because the thing is, once you follow different also generally means cool. Because we spoke last week about like people picking up Pip Decks. Maybe the secret sauce behind Pip Decks is it looks cool, therefore it feels cool to own them, and you feel like a cool person for owning these things because you've got this something that is very different and unique.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you follow that, so different rather than better, you end up making something that feels unique and special and therefore cool, rather than, oh yeah, it's a bit like whatever, like a BMW but better. It's like, oh no, it feels completely different and therefore is unique and cool. I've just realized this entire time we've been talking about tactics that are essentially in brand tactics.
Yeah.
With all this, isn't it? Yeah, but different is better than good. Something like that is the tactic. I think that's the interesting thing about the deck itself is, I think a lot of people kind of think brand tactics is about graphic design and basic color stuff, but I kind of want
Logos
to,
and
I want to put it down, like I was going to say in writing, but verbally here. Of anyone that has like considered brand tactics as that's where it sort of begins and end is like so incredibly wrong, and so much of it is about this kind of. I was just going to say brand again, but that's not summarizing it well enough. I guess finding market fit, would that be a fair pitch
well,
about it?
well, I have problems with that phrase as well, and
Yeah, no.
but only pedantically, because it implies that there is, again, if you take the red ocean analogy, it implies that there's a little pocket just waiting for you in the red ocean that you can just not go
Yeah.
and park yourself in, and hey, you found a little pocket in the market that no one's touched. Like, the whole idea of a gap in the market
Mm.
is, I don't know. It also, it kind of makes you think that you have to like appease or amend your idea so it fits in the schema of what everyone else already expects.
And
But
sometimes that thing doesn't exist because it's a bit shit. Where it's like, I've chased this wholly original thing. Why is nobody doing this? And you realize, oh, it's either incredibly expensive to do, or people don't even want it in the first place. So when you try to create that thing that is so, I suppose maybe, is that a risk of finding that different, not better? Is like figuring out, well, why hasn't anyone done this different thing yet? Is there a reason behind it?
I mean, like, to summon some Rory Sutherland wisdom, I think a lot of the best ideas that come out, you know, aren't necessarily anything other than changing perception, and
Mm-hmm.
that inherently doesn't feel real to, even as a, that feels like magic or literal alchemy to even know that you can do that, and that you can change people's perception on products that already exist with branding. Before Starbucks, it was unheard of to spend the amount of money Starbucks charge for coffee. They they created the, is it the third space? Is that what they call it?
Mm-hmm.
They kind of innovated that concept of being a place that you go and just be in and do stuff and hang out. There wasn't a pub or a library, and they centered it around coffee. Um, I don't know where I'm going with that. What was the what did you just ask?
I was basically suggesting that you got to be careful, because you can end up, if you just chase being different, you can end up making choices that aren't actually good, because there might be a reason why no one's doing that in that way.
Well, again, this comes down to like, why are you even wanting to do it in the first place, and are you doing it for the right reasons? And I think stuff we covered a couple episodes ago about, if you start a business for making money and then you try and fit a business activity in that slot, that equation, you're going to have a hard
No,
time.
that's the point. That's different, because the point that I'm trying to make is, if you're trying to use that innovation curve or
Yeah,
innovation thing,
the
that
value
if you
curve. Yeah.
just the value curve, if you just chase, I don't know, trying to think of a good example. If it's like, oh, if I do this, if everyone's doing X, I'm going to do Y,
Mhm.
and then you're doing that literally only because everyone else is doing X. There might be a reason that they're not doing Y. It might be because it's too costly. It might be because it's customers don't even actually want it. And all I was trying to suggest is, actually, you do need to be considerate, and you can't just, like, different isn't the be all and end all, is it? In terms of like what makes a great product and what makes you stand out from the crowd. Being different is one step. Because like, if you're coming like, oh, Nike, all right, I'm going to make a new trainer company. Everyone sells 2 trainers. I'm going to sell 3. That's different, isn't it? And it's like, yeah, but like no one wants 2 shoes and a spare one. Like,
Yeah, it helps to not be like completely fucking stupid about it, I suppose. But
I mean, that's an extreme example, but I totally see companies doing stuff where it's like, no one really asked you to do that, but you're trying to stand out, you're trying to be different, and people aren't really buying it or interested in it.
I suppose you could look at Jaguar as an example of that. Like, that is that is not only different to what's out there in the market, but it's different to what Jaguar as a car brand used to be. It does feel almost like, when you invert the colors on an image and it just looks like, everyone's face has gone cyan instead of pink. It feels like they've done that to the brand, albeit they haven't actually started selling any cars yet under this new brand, but it has. And also the head of design has left recently. So
really?
It doesn't seem to be like going too well, but it has at very least ignited an interest in what is coming. So I think it has achieved something. But I think what is a good connector here is, Seth Godin talks about, the whole purple cow thing. His whole thing is go to the edges to find the different. And what are you willing to do as a business operator or as a brand and Alex Smith of Brand Tactics talks about this as well. Like, what are you willing to do that other people aren't willing to sacrifice, or is just too unreasonable, or they just can't because they're too invested in another way of doing it that they, I don't take Nationwide. They're never going to shut down all of their branches and try and compete with Monzo with an online offering. That's just that's the different that becomes impactful, because like for Monzo, they don't have the overhead of staff and physical locations and all of the stuff that goes with that, and they can onboard users much faster. They actually put the anti-money laundering checks as something that happens later. They just get you on the app, and they I think they kind of pretended that you have a bank account initially whilst they did checks in the background to make the user experience feel like, oh my God, I just opened a bank account in like 2 minutes. And I remember working at a bank that was a very, old, slow competitor by many standards, given that their IT systems are running on computers that haven't been turned off since the 70s. I would remember a room full of anti-money laundering experts. They just couldn't understand how they're getting away with it or how they could pull it off, because they're so encumbered in like how things already are. But Monzo obviously did that different thing for a reason, is it made a better user experience and it made a leaner business. So it was an obvious thing that to them, again, do what's obvious to you. So I think it has to come from a place of like, we're doing it for X and Y reason, not just for the sake of being different. I think that's probably, is that where you're going with that? Like, don't be different for the sake of it. Be different for the benefit of your customers and the benefit of a business having a chance at surviving long term.
I think that you can apply that even when you're sort of coming up with a business idea. You've spoken about this before to me about like, what is, when you're trying to figure out, oh, what's my deal? If I was going to do a business, like if someone sat there going, I want to start a business, I want to be an entrepreneur. If you just go down, I'm going to go into this space and I'm just going to do everything differently, that's the wrong way to do it. But actually, I think it's like investigating what makes you different and what is the thing that you spend an inordinate amount of time on compared to others, and what's the thing that you weirdly care about more than others. Like, we've spoken about that before, about that is probably the indicator to you of like, you should probably, this is probably an area that you could make some money, you could make a business, because you're doing it anyway prior to the money.
Well, that is the main, to go back to your first question or idea, is that's the biggest advantage a small business has over a big one, is you get to put your face on it. You get to be the real person. Like we had the milkman who owns the milk company that delivers milk. We had the guy who owns the milk company go door to door and to our house and ask, do we want to sign up for a milk delivery? And the company is named after him. And people talk about the milk company by saying his name. So it's like, that's the advantage you get to have. And immediately you have rapport with the person who is responsible for delivering your milk. It isn't a big faceless, Skype kind of named company with venture capitalist backing that has a subsidized service as long as investors are investing in it. I don't mean to go too much on a soapbox about like the actual business economics of faceless companies, but there just feels like there's more skin in the game and accountability and more trust with a small
I
business
think that's the key word for
yeah.
me is trust. Is like, I always go back to people only buy from people that they trust, or people only buy from things that they trust. And those large VC backed organizations, the trust is built. Hey, we're a large VC backed organization. So there's like, you get trust in built because you're a tech company. When you're a small business, if you hide too much behind a brand and people don't really know who you are, thinking particularly in today's world, people are going to assume you're AI. Like people are going to assume it's like, unless you are able to stand behind what you're selling, being like, that's associated with me. Like I happily associate myself with that. I think people more and more are just going to not trust it anymore.
You see a lot of that on TikTok and Instagram of founders putting them. What we're doing now, like we are. The whole point of this podcast was to, or is to lean more into that side of things because it's something that we kind of pretty much have done from day one. Where, my story has always been on the about page. Every email has always been signed off by me with my face on it. And that was intentional because it felt like, again, this is just more Seth Godin wisdom bleeding through. But if you like, why would you not use that as an asset to build trust with your customers you don't even have yet? Why would you just like beeline to being this like faceless brand? And I guess I could be speaking to just a completely wrong audience about this in terms of there's a whole wide world out there of content creators who kind of work the other way around, where they build themselves up first and then the business comes later.
Yeah, we spoke about that last week.
But that can feel a bit incongruent and dishonest, I think. Sometimes I won't like throw around examples, but the kind of diehard parasocial relationships that form feel a bit.
Well, we spoke about Prime before, and the Prime having that kind of feeling.
Yeah, but it can. I don't know. I feel like, oh, they're selling out, and suddenly that relationship you thought you had, that parasocial relationship you thought you had, gets shattered. Where I feel like maybe the way that we're doing it is that we get to talk and interact with our customers and our fans because it's about the thing that we're already doing, and it isn't this like, it's not a bait and switch, but like when you start watching someone's content and then one day you watch a video and then they've like slipped in a product sponsorship and it kind of like, whoa, all right. Suddenly you're now like, are they now doing things because of that? Like, are they changing what they're doing or what they're talking about? Or they're recommending things because they have, vested interest in it. I don't know. I'm going down.
It almost is a bit worse when it's coming from when they're like sponsoring a business that isn't theirs. When they're sort of like NordVPN, they suddenly start talking about that, and you're like, we were just talking about like your diary. I don't know why we suddenly jumped onto NordVPN, and it feels even more like a sellout versus like, the Hank Greens of the world who make things, get very excited about those things, talk about those things on YouTube, talk about a lot of things on YouTube, and then you can go over and use his stuff that he's made and built and consume that as well. And that all feels very symbiotic, and it feels like a very natural way to build and sell and to communicate and to spend time with your customers. And it all feels like, I don't know, like the model way to do it, I guess. But he obviously went around it a different way and started as a content creator and then started selling. But I think him and his brother have always been builders and creators. And then this platform, or YouTube and stuff, has been their way to kind of communicate that. And it's not quite marketing, but it also technically kind of is. It's just good stuff, good storytelling ultimately.
Well, that's the main equation in business is product plus distribution. And if you have the product and no distribution, as in your ability to get it into people's hands who want what you're making, if you don't have that part of the equation, you don't have a business yet. And I think a lot of content creators basically start out building the distribution channel first. And a lot of times and not realizing that's the value that they were building. But I think the jig is up. That's a big motivation for people these days. Is what things that you can do with an audience. I think with Pip Decks, it was very much product first, try and then solve for distribution later. But it was such a baby step, like snowball growth. I had also the opportunity to like share the prototype with people I was working with. So I had some very manual initial distribution. But to come back to the actual point I was about to make is that, again, this is a bit of a Seth Godin sponsored episode. But
That's what every episode is.
I'm just a walking Seth Godin bloody acolyte.
Like a Pez dispenser of Seth Godin quotes.
I'm an acolyte. I think this is right. His definition of marketing is just finding the people who need what you've got. Like, that's all it is. But marketing as a phrase, and if I ask you to imagine a sports car, you think of like a red convertible. When people think about marketing, they think about adverts, billboards, and emails, but not the stuff that we were talking about before, which is the brand / strategy, which a business's brand is basically inherently its strategy as well. Like with the Monzo example, there was certain decisions they made as a brand to be different, but that's inherently coupled with how the business operates. And I think to remember that marketing is also like an outcome of how you've configured the brand in that way. Does that make sense? Am I making any sense?
I think so. I think it's like I also think people think when it comes to marketing, people are like, I hate marketing. And it's like, no, you hate bad marketing, because
good marketing's invisible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And and then again, someone thinks something very nefarious about it. But, your favorite content creator that is then asking you to buy their drink or whatever, that is all part of it. That's all part of marketing. What this podcast is marketing. And you could approach it in a, I think the problem is, sorry, just to back up, I think the problem is marketing is seen as an expense for a lot of businesses. And I think, going back to businesses in particular, rather than seeing it as an investment of something sort of longer and seen as like asset building. And I think when you start to see it as a cost, you see everything through ROAS, immediate response, that kind of stuff, which we absolutely did through Facebook ads and things like that.
Return on investment, yeah.
Yeah, return on ad spend. And actually stuff like this podcast itself, you go marketing, and we could try to find out what's the most low cost way for us to do it and what's the most efficient way, and how should we talk to each other so then it can be easily cut really neatly into mini chunks. And maybe we should get some guests on which will increase viewership and stuff like that. And you can try to like do that min-maxing thing, and it starts to feel very inorganic versus what we're doing. And the whole secret reason that we do it is that we like talking to each other. We do pontificate and waffle over lots of things. And we were like, maybe we should get a microphone. This could double up for some free content that people can get. But we like talking about it anyway. And I think that's the difference. And that's the kind of why people have why marketing has a bad rap, because people are doing the other thing where they're trying to min-max. And obviously I understand why. Totally understand why. And I think when companies just do that, that's when the marketing starts to go sour and goes a bit naff. But when people are able to, and companies are able to waste money, like you said, like, allow you to do that, waste some money, you could say this hour that we spent is a waste of time. We could have spent it on something else. But who knows, maybe after however many episodes that we do, suddenly something goes viral and all that time suddenly doesn't look wasted anymore. And also you've built this bedrock of fans who are into it because you're being quite authentic. You're not trying to min-max. You're not being gross. You're not selling something straight away. You are just kind of talking about what you're interested in. And if you built your business well enough, your customers will be interested in what you're talking about as well. And that's good marketing.
Yeah, and that is the really hard lesson to learn, and it's one that we've been round and round with, because when you're advertising, yeah, this is not to brag at all, but having spent literally tens of millions on Facebook ads, you start to optimize towards a bigger and broader audience, because it kind of works, and it kind of, obviously there's diminishing returns, and you have to get leaner in lots of other areas, and the economics of a business changes when your main revenue comes from trying to, like, again, min max all of the metrics that make that profitable. But the real secret sauce that I think we'll just keep coming back to, because it's something that we need to remind ourselves of, and we see other people doing it and then we forget it, or we don't, I don't know, is that the more specific you can be, largely the better. And I don't think that means, I used to think that meant, like, you know, the whole Derek Sivers proudly rejects 99% of the market and 1% is still millions of people, in terms of like what your offering is. I don't think it's necessarily like pigeonholing your business, like, oh, we're only going to serve this type of people in this location who are into this sort of thing. I don't think you need to be that upfront prescriptive about who it's for. And I think what we're kind of maybe learning quite late in the game, by the virtue of starting a podcast after nearly 7 years of running a content business, is that, and this is a thought I had earlier on in this podcast that just felt a little bit too innocuous to say out loud, but your better or different is just being you. And I know that sounds really trite, but you are inherently already a unique person. And by doing things the way that is obvious to you, that you enjoy, and this is a point you've already made, but it bears repeating, by leaning into yourself and doing the business how you want to do it, and serving the people that you like to serve, and even if you don't know how to articulate who those people are yet, but you know that you like people who like learning, and you like people who like nice things, and you like people who like to hear from you talk about certain things like what we're talking about now, the filtration of time and the word of mouth, again, best marketing methods channel is word of mouth. But that only happens because, that is the marketing. It's like, I just like what they do and I love their products, and I want to tell other people about it because I like it. It is a really basic kind of thing to not lose sight of.
I think it's really hard.
Exactly.
You can say it's trite. I think it's trite because you can intellectually, this is what I've been learning this week, you can intellectually understand, oh, I am unique. I am special just by being the grace of being me. And I am, there is something special. And if I make a business, it'll be unique simply because I've made it. You can intellectually understand that. Mm-hmm. But until you emotionally accept it, which is, I have literally gone to therapy for it. Unless you really do have to fully take it on and believe that as a default. Otherwise, even if you tell yourself, oh, well, yeah, something unique, you're not. You're going to try to copy someone else. You're going to look over the garden fence. You're going to look for, but just to be safe, I'm going to see whatever mate he's doing. Whereas, you do need to be quite, and I think you were, even with your self-doubt, I think you've always had a pretty confident belief in your ability to make something different and to be different. And I guess also we were told a lot when we were kids that we were quite different, namely being told that we were weird. So we probably already had it.
I don't want to confuse confidence for, the appearance of, or the seemingly confident moves that can be made in hindsight. You can confuse that maybe to I don't know, somewhat blinkered, or blinkered in a good way. I have, you have a vision, or I think I want it just so in this particular way. And I don't have the headspace to entertain the other ways that it could be done. And it is that blindly like letting you lead yourself kind of feeling, which I think then looks like confidence, but it is you just being like, well, I don't know, I just know it's got to have cartoon characters on. I don't know why. I know this is the naming convention I want for it, and I know that I want it to look like a pack of Marlboro cigarettes.
But I guess I guess that comes from like knowing yourself very well, because like you going through that, like, well, I know I want this, I know I want this. I can
That's a very
probably
design-centered lens, by the way, and that's my background. So I don't know if that's a thing, a factor.
maybe, I guess, like if I'm doing writing, I guess, yeah, I suppose maybe there is an element of like, I just know this bit needs to be in there. But I think for a lot of steps and lots of stages, I wouldn't necessarily know. I'd have to kind of explore, research, whatever. But most of the time I wouldn't do that. I'll just tell myself, well, you don't even know what you want, so just give up on that business idea. You know, like I guess even if it wasn't through a sense of confidence, I suppose maybe that is a slight power of yours, whether you chose it or not, whether the radioactive spider just bit you, that ability to be like, well, I know what I want here, so I'm just gonna go and build it.
Yeah, I don't want to like mystify myself. Like I have some like weird special gift that is
No,
unattainable.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think, like I say, I just think people probably need to really sit down and think about, think about it and think about genuinely what they want and not what they should want. And maybe that's the thing. I think with a lot of business, like you think, well, other people in this space are doing this, so I should do that as well. And actually, it's like removing that should and being like, what do you want? Like, what do you want to do?
I mean, there's an argument to be made of the opposite, and I think this is why our conversations are so fun.
Let me counter that just before you do. A classic example would
this
be...
This is a preemptive counter, by the way. Are you
this is a preemptive counter. Yeah, this is an early strike.
Okay.
Is one of the things that we knew that we should get better at doing organic content. We knew at Pip Decks we should get better at better organic content. And so we tried a million different ways of doing that. And we should have high production values, and we should have one of our authors involved, and we should do this and blah, 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 blah. And that just didn't work out for us. And didn't get us the results that we want, didn't really enjoy doing it. And then, so what do we want to do? Well, we want to essentially hang out and sit and talk to each other forever. Let's record it, make it a podcast. And now that's become our content strategy. So now it's become this thing that we want is done better, and it's gotten better results for us than anything that we should have done. And that in itself is different.
Oh, I think my counter actually like complements it, which is you're saying like, sit down and like really think about what do you really want to do, or what, why are you doing it or whatnot. I would argue the opposite in the sense of like, don't think too much about it, I guess is where I'm coming from. Like I felt like I didn't think too much about what I was doing, and I was, by talking about it in the way of leading myself, when there was like a I don't know, an idea or a thing that I could like latch onto, like the name Workshop Tactics. I'm like, yeah, that feels right. And then the next kind of questions emerge from that. Like, what's it going to look like? And then you kind of play around with something and you feel that, I don't know, maybe that's something I'm maybe good at, is getting a feel for the feeling to hold on to, knowing that that's all there is. That's the only thing I can go on is like, this feels good. Let's keep moving in that direction with it. And just trust that if you just keep doing that, things start to line up. And then you look back and you're like, holy shit, like that, it's all come together in this way. But you can't see that, ahead. You can only do that when you look back. And so I think...
And I guess that ties back into what you were talking about last week, where it's a mixture of data points. It's like testing things, ideas via customers or whatever, but then also allowing your gut to be a genuine data point and not something that should be ignored in some way, that actually should be brought in to help you make decisions.
Yeah, I mean, there's stuff that I've, de facto decided on and then share with people. And, maybe an example is of the thing that we're building lately with the name of it. There is an inherent tension with like big decisions like that, and I'm like, well, I think that's what it should be called. I don't have any other data to argue for or against it. It's just like, I don't know if it's like a mildly autistic, like, feels good for it to be that way, and I feel bad if it isn't. It's as simple as that type thing. But yeah,
I think that's where like artistry and stuff kind of comes into business. Is, you know, you haven't run it through a group testing or whatever and been like, what's your favorite name, and pick 5 and, you know, rank them 1 out of 5. It's like, it's your thing, it feels right for you, and you're going to do that. And like, it's probably no one's ever going to go, I'm not going to buy that because it's called that name. You know?
Yeah, I mean, God, isn't like life and business and stuff just so much more interesting when it does come from that place of someone's like soul, and you can see it straight away with any, like, you know, there's a cafe just in the market next to me, and it's the person's name, and she works there, and she's handwritten the menu, and there's a story behind why everything's done this way that feels congruent, because it is like, it's just her like expressing herself through the medium of business. And I think you can absolutely treat a business like art, but I think what maybe, you know, probably for another time, but like treating art like business is just a trickier thing. But I do try and think, like, how do you be more lighthearted and fun with what you're doing? Because when you are, you're getting like the real essence of you, and like you come out. That's where the unique stuff comes from. Is when you like you say, you're doing stuff not because you think you should, but you're doing it almost because you need to. Like, I need my, I don't know, insert stupid business idea here. I need this to exist. I don't care how or why or where. I just need it to exist. I have an unreasonable, irrational compulsion for this to exist, and then you're off to the races. Like, I think that is such a good place to start. And I think if you have that feeling, that's like the best sign ever, because when things get really fucking hard, as they inevitably do, it's that here's passion. That passion that you're willing to suffer for the thing that you're making. You might, if you're going to go into business, you might as well suffer for something that you really want to do. Imagine going into a business that you're not that asked about and having to suffer anyway. Because that's
I think so many people do that. Yeah, I think so many people do that, man.
I feel so bad for people that end up in that. And I get it, that, you know, like, you become a co-founder to a thing that seemed promising, but you're not that bothered by the actual thing itself. Hey, you know, different strokes for different folks, though. Some people are motivated by different things, but yeah.
I think that's a nice place to wrap up the episode. I'm going to end it. I want you to give me your favorite word at the moment.
Only because I've been giving my son hard words to say to see how well he can cope with them. Because he's 3 and he's saying multi-syllable words, seemingly out of the blue. He can just copy them. I'm just like, what? How is this even? Is this right for a 3-year-old to do that? I'm pretty sure the 5-year-old wasn't doing this. Is he programmed right? Onomatopoeia.
Mine's crab.